This is the story of a man who overcame the odds to become a respected primary school teacher. This is something that he himself might not have thought possible when he was growing up, moving from school to school and not resting long enough to properly focus on academic achievement.
We travelled. I mean, I was never in one place longer than 3 years, except obviously on second or third calls, returns to the same place. But to travel the amount we did and to have the freedom, which in those days was a lot more than it obviously is nowadays, was fascinating.
Ray's dad, Tony, was in the Royal Engineers, a job which took him all over the world. And a lot of the time, the family went with him.
Generally speaking, my father's overseas posts were either 9 months or 3 years. And if we moved around in the UK, quite often we'd go with him. So it could be 9 months here, 9 months in Yorkshire, 9 months in Hampshire. When we went overseas, 3 years in Gibraltar, 3 years in Germany, and it was never exactly 3 years, but that was, generally speaking, what they set out to be the time for the jobs that he was organising and in charge of.
The family lived in Gibraltar for 3 years when Ray was 7. This is Ray's mum and dad with one of his brothers and a few chimpanzees.
My own personal real difficulty with it was the hopping around in all the different schools. I never really took to school because I was never there long enough to sort of get to know people. I always ended up with people that had their own groups and their own friends outside of school that they'd known, they'd grown up with, and I didn't have that.
Inevitably, moving around meant that it was difficult for Ray and his brothers to keep up with academic work, particularly maths and science.
There was no way I was ever going to be any good at maths because I'd be doing level 1 in one school, I'd go to the next school and they'd be on level 2 and I hadn't reached that far. Or they might be doing something specific for one term and I'd miss that term and then start at the second term and hadn't got the base. So mathematics was a difficult one particularly.
Perhaps not surprising, therefore, that Ray opted for a military career. Ray joined the RAF and initially worked as a storeman. Luckily, computers had just been introduced, so his lack of academic qualifications was not an issue.
Every single item, from a button right the way up to an aircraft mainframe, was identified by what was called the number itself. And it had a small bit at the front, which was a number and a letter. So 5E was electric batteries. And then each of them had up to a 9-digit number that told you what it was. So if, for instance, when I worked at Stafford, we had this vast place and we had to collect stuff ready to send off to such and such a camp, they would give you a list and you'd go around with it and you'd know where the locations were. It all came out of the computer. They're in this floor 3, aisle Z or whatever, and you just go up and get them, put them ready, and off they'd go downstairs into a lorry and be sent off. So from that point of view, it was quite simple. That's my father's medal, and they're only just beginning to get them out now. And this is the Medal of Recognition for all the people who were at the atomic bomb trials. He also had one of those, and that one there is the General Service Medal for saying you'd been somewhere where there was fighting or whatever going on. But generally he also had one of those, which I can't find. I don't know whether it just got lost. But I got one as well, and that drew me much closer to my father, and I was really pleased with that. That was in Oman I can't remember, halfway through my career, and it was nice. Those are the two remembrance things from the services that I share with my father. He was Army, I was Air Force, but we both got recognised as having done what we regarded as our duty.
Ray particularly enjoyed playing sport for the Air Force and is pictured here with an RAF hockey team. At the age of 29, Ray decided to leave the Air Force and was looking around for another career. His love of sport led him to work with children, initially helping out in an after-school club.
In those days, the government were worried about children who left school at 3 o'clock and the parents were still working till 5. So you've got children from whatever age, 5, all the way through to 11 or what have you, and longer, higher if you're secondary school. But most secondary schools had things that they could do after school. Some junior schools did, but still left a lot of children out there with nowhere to go if they didn't have other family or the situation where there was somebody there to care for them.
So for one group of children in Gravesend, Ray became that person. He realised that he was good at it, and encouraged by his then girlfriend, started having ideas of becoming a teacher. This involved going back and taking his maths O-level and then getting a degree in education from Greenwich University. But it all worked out in the end.
Quite a jump up from very little. But yeah, it worked out in the end. And I had a very, very, very nice career being a primary school teacher.
Ray was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia 3 or 4 years ago. He spends some of his time helping others who have recently received a diagnosis. So what advice does he have for others?
Find out what you can. I help now with some of the groups around the Living Well with Dementia group, for instance. I go in and I talk about what I do and how I've done it. But that group gives you a lot of information, and it gives you much more than you think in the way of choices. I think it's very easy to sit back and say, okay, that's it, what do I do now? But it can be equally as easy to sit there and say, right, well, I know what I'm going to do now, I want to carry on with this or do that. And I would suggest try it.